there's some basic hand sewing that you can apply to your task, which was sewing over photographs. So this is an enlarged photocopy of a photograph, just to show you that it is feasible to sew onto paper. Even from a magazine you could take out an image. Sometimes you'd have to crop it down to actually handle it, and you'll see that when I show you how I'd sew into that pepper there. So what I've previously done on the back, and you'll know the reason why, is just to draw through that particular shape that I'm going to sew on top of. So with your thread, if you're using thin household thread, you'd put it through the needle and double it up. So there's 2 strands there, as you can see. Okay, so then I want you to put that together and you can tie a knot. So the way I tie a knot, well, I'll probably make this look really easy now, but it's hard. You can roll it around your finger, twist it, pull it down, and you've actually got the perfect knot underneath. If not, you're going to be there for a while trying to make that knot. So from your image, you will sew that. That's why I've got that drawing at the back. You can put your thread through and it comes to the top side. So I'm just going to do a running stitch that you're most familiar with. And I'm going to sew. I'm not pulling that very hard. I'm going to try and keep it to a similar length. And at the back, you can see my needle there. If you're not able to firstly do it all at the same time, what I'm going to do is show you. So you put your needle in, and this is why if the paper was smaller it'd be easy to handle. You put your needle in through the back, and then of course you're going to think, well, where am I going to come out? So what you do is you have a peek because you've drawn it previously, so then you can just put your needle back through and it'll come out with a slight gap, and then you repeat that process again. Okay, so then I can see where that's going. Now if you want the stitches to be closer together, you put it back through again, and then you don't go forwards like I was doing, where I'd normally carry on here. I'd go back to the last stitch I did and then put it back through. So you then take a long leap here. Your judgment is there, so you'd put your needle in there and you can see it's come to the right place there, and then you go back. So it gives you a textural value and you still get a line. So it's, to me, this is more appealing visually than the gap in between. So I'll just show you that one more time. So I'm obviously going to start from the back, and where I know to start from is a length along there, push it through, up there, don't go forward with it here, go back to a little hole next to the other one, and I'll pull that through. Sometimes you can get in a knot and it can get frustrating, but just be patient. If I was to pull this really hard, then it will rip the paper. Most people don't do it on paper or photographs, they do it on fabric, but we're going to do it on paper. So that's what you can do. So you're emphasising at the moment shape. So you're sewing along a line, you're emphasising eventually the shape, because that's what I've drawn on the back, and then you're adding colour. So you're addressing shape, line, colour. Am I creating texture? Well, I think I would be able to do some texture on here, but I'm going to show you on one of these pips of the pomegranate. So I've drawn one there, but what I do here is something rather adventurous, and I would take a thicker thread, which is an embroidery thread. So there's some here, and you just, again, you don't just pull this out without care, because this is a long yarn that's meters and meters long. So you pull out what you need gradually, you cut it off, you put it through your needle. Now this needle is a thicker needle because it's got a wider eye, otherwise you could be there ages trying to get that thread through. The other needle that we previously used was a lot finer, which was one like this. So that was a lot finer because the thread was finer. Okay, So they're the difference in needles. So we're going with the huge needle and the thicker thread, but we're not doubling that thread up this time. You do it singly, and again I'm just going to twist that so I've got a knot at the beginning. So you need to knot the end so that it won't come undone. And I'm just going to sew into, so you start from the back. Hopefully I can sew, and it's quite thick, so you can just look at the back, make sure you don't rip your paper. And I'm actually going to build this up as, I'll push those out of the way. I'm going to push this as one big pip, so I'm not going to do small stitches. I'm going to attempt to I'm going to look back at where I am, so I'd want it next to it, to make texture by doing long stitches through the paper. So I'm representing that shape. I'm just going to turn it because I know I want it there. Oh. This is where it gets tricky if it's, that's it. So I'm pulling that through without a knot. And then I'm just going to go to the side of that. There. I want that to be over to the left more. Over here. I'm just going to jump over, and I'm going to start representing that shape a little bit more. I'm exaggerating that pip so that you can see how you can represent it. Now, you might say, well, that's not very accurate. However, you can then go back through to the right side, and you can bind that stitch around to make a texture. So I've tried to emphasize the shape. So what I've done is I've put the needle through all of those stitches. I'll just move that so you can see it a bit clearer. And then I'm going to go on top. It's something, this is a bit hard to do on a machine. So therefore hand sewing has its place. It's more like darning a sock. So I'm going to loop it over, and you can create these textures by raising the surface by stitching by hand. Okay, so that's what you can do. Now, when I'm going to finish this now, and then I'm just going to show you how I'd leave this. I've just manipulated my finger to keep that to one side. I'm going to push it back through the other side, and I won't leave the thread, I won't leave the thread hanging. I will knot that. I'm just going to check. There's no loop there. So I should be able to make a slight secure in it with a knot if I don't rip the paper, okay, and then you can knot it off. And then what we do is we cut the end, but leave some on the end so that, leave that so it doesn't all come undone. And then you can emphasize the shape.